Hey all, welcome to my basement game room, and here for another review, this time Gran Turismo 2, or to paraphrase the famous poet and YouTube poop star Michael Rosen, Gran Turismo 2, or How I Learned to Love Arcade Racing. Now, to explain that, because I know full well that this is simulation, so let's start with what Gran Turismo 2 is. It's a simulation racing game. So here's the difference between arcade and simulation. Arcade is fun. Simulation is sort of fun, but not as fun. Arcade is easy to understand and easy to play, especially if you're like me, who has no experience behind the wheel. In fact, my mother constantly prevents me from getting a driver's license, prevents me from owning a car. Therefore, I do not have the experience or the knowledge or the capability of operating a automobile of sorts. At least with an arcade game, I can play it and not have any serious problems with my skill. Simulation, on the other hand, requires you to understand how cars work and therefore is not as fun. Trust me, because the only reason I'd ever watch Top Gear is to see what those three buttholes are doing. So anyway, presentation. The sound is awesome. The music, whatever is there, is so good. It's hard to describe. It's basically like typical racing game music, but it's just good. The only thing that I do have a definite opinion on is the noise when you're selecting things in a menu. That doon 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 sound. It's fantastic. And then we go to the graphics. And the graphics is superb. And I know a lot of people give the PlayStation 1 and the N64 shit for not having good 3D graphics, and saying that, oh, the Super Nintendo and the Genesis have much better graphics even though they're 2D. Give them a break! These things were cutting edge back in the day, and you're gonna give them shit because they just didn't age well? Well, I mean, I get it with a Nintendo 64 and Majora's Mask being, you're playing it through a shit filter, but I mean, on the whole, this game's graphics are good, and I just love the way the cars look. They all look super shiny, as if somebody washed them 20 times and then put them under, 5 inches, a 5-inch layer of wax. I love old racing games because how shiny the cars are. It's sort of on the verge of absurdity of how shiny these cars look. And of course we go to the controls. They're sharp and responsive, but in order to get the full amount of enjoyment, use one of these and not one of these. So anyway, the controls are good. The presentation's good. What about the gameplay? And here, my opinion differs. The gameplay is great. It's fun. It's satisfying. But this game requires you to have spent considerable time behind the wheel of an actual car for you to fully understand it. For example, going around corners. The game expects you to slow down and to take the turn by braking and easing off the accelerator. Of course, when you do this, you go from first place to last place in the split of a second, and of course, sometimes if your car doesn't have enough horsepower, it can't go as fast as some of the other cars. Which then brings us to another complaint of this game, is when you buy cars. It doesn't tell you how fast it is, how good its acceleration is. It tells you the weight of the car and how much horsepower and what wheel drive, whether it's front wheel, rear drive, mid-engine, four-wheel drive. The game expects you to calculate the difference in weight, horsepower, and whatever jargon it throws at you, and it expects you to understand how good a car is. For me, what I always do is get the car that has four-wheel drive and the highest amount of horsepower. Of course, there's certain races that have you be under a certain amount of horsepower, and good luck finding a decent car that's able to do those races effectively. So you're thinking, oh, he's shitting on a good game. How could he? When in the last review, he, talked about people shitting on a game. And look, I am not shitting on it, even though I am. I love this game, but I also hate it at the same time because it is such a travesty that somehow I'm not good enough at it. Like, I'm good enough at it to an extent, but that's mostly because I grinded for money to buy a car that gave me an edge. And honestly, if I want to grind... Oh, where is it? Well, anyway, oh, here it is. If I wanted to grind, I'd play this. Final Fantasy VII and RPGs in general are much more satisfying to grind than this. So, at the end of the day, is this a good game? Yes. But if you've actually driven a car, then you'll understand this game to a T. If you're like me, who's a bigger fan of public transportation, a man who knows, like, I can tell you all about the SDP-40F, the P-30CH, the GE Genesis, one of the other diesels. I can tell you about each and every locomotive on the Amtrak system. I can tell you the difference between the London Northeastern Railway and the London Midland and Scotland. I can tell you that, but God forbid I have to tell somebody how the difference between a Honda Civic and a Toyota Corolla, then that's where things fall apart. Because frankly, they're both the same car. Who cares? So, I give this game a thumbs up.